Hi, my name is Emily Reiss, and I'm a career counselor here at Troy University. Today, I want to talk to you about interviewing to give you some tips and some tricks and commonly asked questions so that way you will feel more confident going into your next interview. Before we get started, I want you to reflect back on any interview experience that you've ever had. Now, this could have been an interview for a part-time job, a full-time job, an internship, or maybe even just to get into an organization or program. Think about how you felt before, after, and during that interview experience, and what were some of your emotions and feelings? Were you nervous? Were you scared? Were you a little bit anxious about the whole interview process? Or were you pretty confident that you could portray yourself in a manner that would help you get hired for that job? Most students feel pretty nervous and anxious when it comes to interviewing, and I believe it's because they don't know the proper tools of how to prepare and some of the tricks and tips that I'm going to teach you today. So, a big part of preparing for an interview actually happens before you even apply for a position and have that interview. So, we will start with self knowledge, and this is really important because you need to reflect on who you are as a person and what value you can bring to the company that you're applying with. So think about things such as your values, your interests and skills, and how those align with the job description and the company that you're applying for, as well as any relevant experience that you have, whether those are jobs, internships, or activities or projects that you've been a part of. Think about any other personal qualifications that you have, whether this is and something that can help you stand out against another candidate. You also want to think about some of your goals and your objectives. So, how will this job in this company help you reach your goals in your career and what you're interested in? Another part of preparing for an interview comes from research, and this is really important. So, you want to make sure that you research and find out as much as you can about the company and position you're applying for. We live in a very digital age, and so every company is going to have a website. They're more than likely going to have some sort of social media, and so you want to make sure that you have looked at all of those things. You want to learn about a company through their website, learn what their mission statement is, what are some of their values, what do their pictures and videos show about the culture of that organization. You also want to look at their social media. What are they passionate about? What kind of things do they share? And again, what's that culture like? And is it something that you will fit in well with within that company? Another thing you want to do is plan out your route. So think about the directions, make sure you know exactly where you're going and that you have factored in plenty of time to get to your destination. You never want to be late for an interview, so you want to factor in things like parking, traffic, and then finding the actual building or location of where you will be doing your interview. Another huge part of the interview process is dressing professionally. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the difference between business casual and business professional. So you can see business casual is, like it says, a lot more casual. So it could be anything for ladies, such as a nice trouser pants, a skirt, or a dress. These can be a little more colorful and have more patterns. So it could be stripes or flowers or something with some sort of print. You can wear heels or a flat still, and you may dress it up a little bit by wearing a cardigan or some sort of jacket. But again, you're not wearing a matching suit. For men, on the other hand, it looks pretty similar. So you will also wear some sort of nice dress pants. You could have a little bit of pattern, but we still don't want to get too crazy with any of our patterns that we choose. You'll want to have some sort of collared shirt, whether that is a polo or a button down. This could be with or without a tie, and again, with or without a jacket. So a lot of people will wear khaki pants and maybe a blue blazer, and that would be a really good definition of business casual. Now, for business professional, as you'll see on the right-hand side of each of these figures, that is going to be your full suit. So this can be a variety of different colors. We suggest a black, gray, or navy blue as far as something that's nice and traditional. And so again, a full suit. And so we always say you want to be the most conservative version of yourself when preparing for an interview. And so I think a full suit with nice dress shoes and tasteful patterns is really important for making that good first impression. So here are a couple of business casual examples, and you can see that they range in variety. So the first image is a person with nice trousers and a tie, and if he put on a matching jacket, then he would actually be business professional. Our second image here is a lot more casual, and he's wearing just a polo, but again, appropriate in some situations. The people in the middle have a variety of different outfits on, and then our two ladies on the end are showing you other options as far as what business casual could look like. And so again, these are our business professional examples. And so you'll see a lot of dark colors, matching suits, and just a more professional look overall. So again, we typically suggest black, gray, or navy blue. And I think the people in these pictures demonstrate why we would say those choices. So just kind of a fun game. Let's practice a little bit. This guy right here would obviously be business casual. In the middle, we have a very good example of a business professional suit. It's very nice, tasteful patterns, and he looks very sharply dressed. Now here's one that we would say is not business casual or professional. Yes, she's wearing a skirt, but it's pretty short. Her top is low cut and her heels are very high. And so that would be an example of how we would not want to look during an interview. This would be a really good example of business professional for women. And here's another example of something that we would not want to wear. So yes, it's technically a suit, but it has short pants and a paisley print pattern. And so even if this were a long pantsuit, it would still not be appropriate due to the pattern. And this is another example of a business casual outfit for a man. A couple more. So again, business casual, business professional, although I would be a little careful about the jewelry that you wear, ladies. Make sure that your necklace isn't too bold, and this one could be if you were going in for an interview. Very good example of business professional, and again, business casual. So I hope this helps you kind of think about what outfits you should wear. Again, we're always going to suggest that it is more business professional than business casual, just so that way you ensure that you're making that good first impression for your interview. Some things to think about as far as what to bring. Extra copies of your resume and references are always important. Now, this may not be needed depending on the situation, and oftentimes they're already going to have printed out your resume for everybody, but sometimes they'll bring in a panel of interviewers, and they may not have a copy of your resume right there, and so you will look extra prepared if you can pull one of those out to hand out to them, so that way everybody can be in the loop as far as what your experiences are. And a good way to carry in your resumes is to have some sort of padfolio or portfolio. Now, these are just little binders that have a place for a legal pad, a pen, and some business cards, and usually a pocket, and that's where you would put your extra resumes. You can use these portfolios to take notes either before the interview for any questions that you have, or maybe during the interview if they're stating something that you think is important that you would like to remember after the interview is over. And you always want to bring your smile with you. This is really important because, like we talked about in the beginning, oftentimes people are pretty nervous when it comes to interviewing. And so when we're nervous, our usual likelihood is not to smile. So you want to make sure that you're putting in that extra effort so that way you look personable and your personality can really shine through. Two important things not to bring to an interview. One would be a cell phone. This should be pretty common sense, but we're so tied to our technology that sometimes we don't think about these things. So we suggest that you turn off your cell phone and leave it in the car. And if you don't do that, at least turn it off. Don't just put it on vibrate. You still don't want that to happen. And you really don't want your digital watches or your smart watches to go off either. So again, that's why we suggest just turning off your cell phone so that way there are no distractions there. You also don't want to chew gum. Yes, we want your breath to be fresh, and we definitely understand that, but chewing gum during an interview is really disrespectful, and it's also distracting. So just be careful of that. Make sure that you spit out any gum that you have before you step foot into that building. When it comes to arriving for the interview, we have a few tips. We say arrive at least 10 minutes early, but no more than 15. So you want to show that you can be sharp and punctual, but you never want to make the interviewer feel rushed or that they have to get things ready faster before they interview you. Oftentimes, interviewers have a set schedule, and so they may be interviewing several people that day, and they set those up very strategically, so you don't want to mess that up, and you don't want to be sitting in the hall with the two people that you're interviewing against either. So 10 minutes early is really the key for arriving for an interview. We're also going to suggest that you do not use your cell phone once you enter the building. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but you want to look professional, and again, you want to look personable. So really, your interview starts the moment you pull onto that campus or that company's property. You want to be polite to everybody that you see, and so that's my third point, and they tie in together. So you don't want to sit in in the lobby and be texting on your cell phone or watching funny Twitter videos or Instagram stories, and let the secretary see that, right? Because again, your interview really starts the moment you pull onto that site. And so you want to be kind to everybody that you see, thank the person who holds the door open for you, be kind and welcoming to the secretary, because that's really important. And a lot of these people hold a lot of weight in the decision-making process. So if you're rude to the secretary, whenever the boss comes back and says, well, what'd you think of so-and-so? Chances are you're not going to get a good review, and that could really hurt you throughout the process. Now, during the interview, usually the first thing that's going to happen is they're going to welcome you in. They might say hello, and then they're going to give you a handshake. And so this is something that you want to practice. It can seem a little silly, but handshakes can be pretty difficult for people. So think about any awkward handshake that you've ever had and how that would have gone if that were an interview process. So make sure that you practice with somebody. A firm, polite handshake is what we're looking for here. Now, during your introductions, make sure that your speech is calm and clear. So again, typically we're going to be nervous during an interview, but we're going to try our best to take that deep breath and remain calm and just answer the questions in the order that they come. This also plays into your posture. So you want to sit with your hands in your lap or on the table and try not to fidget too much. Also, you want to sit still in your chair. Don't rock back and forth. If it's a swivel chair, try really hard to sit still. And you can do this by keeping your feet on the floor or crossing them at the ankles. So we don't want to lounge back in a chair. We don't want to have any sort of lounge posture. We want to sit up nice, polite, so that way we can put our best foot forward during the interview. You also want to make eye contact with everyone who is in the interview. So oftentimes you'll have what we call a panel of interviewers. And so they might ask questions as they go down the line. And so you don't want to only look at the person who's in front of you or the person who's asked the question. You want to make sure that you're looking at everybody equally throughout the interview process, since they're all there on the panel to see if you would be a good fit for that company. So a couple more do's. You do, again, like I said, want to smile and look approachable. This is really important. Even though you're nervous, try your best to let your personality show through. Think before you speak. So I don't mean take a whole long minute pause, but make sure that you've thought about the question before you start to answer. And again, you want to provide solid examples, and this goes all the way back to your resume. So make sure that you aren't lying or fibbing on your resume, that everything you've listed that you've actually done and you could talk about during an interview. Don't give some sort of hazy example of something that you've done. Use real concrete examples. Couple things that you don't want to do is tell the interviewer that you're nervous. Again, most of us will be, but you don't want to keep saying, I'm sorry, I'm so nervous, or oh, I'm messing up. Again, you kind of want to fake it in these situations to make yourself seem more confident. Also, try not to ramble or cover too much with one answer. So again, an interview should be more of a back and forth conversation. So you don't want to have a 5-minute answer that kind of covers all of the questions that they're going to ask. Usually your answer should be between about 1 minute to 2 minutes, just depending on the question. And never be negative about a current or previous employer or job, even if it's something that you are really unhappy with. So be really careful how you phrase those questions in situations. So a couple of basic interview questions that can help you get prepared. The first thing that I can pretty much guarantee that they're going to ask you at the beginning of the interview is, tell me a little bit about yourself. And so this is a really great opportunity for you to give a short overview of who you are and what you're interested in. Now, this needs to be kept more on a professional basis. So we're not trying to know where you were born and if you're married and if you have a dog or anything like that. We really want to know who you are academically and professionally. So you might start out by saying your major, what year you are in school, any sort of cool or different experience that you've had, and then what you're looking forward to about that job or company. You're probably going to be asked something about your strengths and your weaknesses, and so a few things to keep in mind here. You want your strengths to be positive and something that relate to the job itself. So think a little bit outside of the box. What's something in the job description that you believe really is a strength for you and a benefit that you could bring to the team? Now for weaknesses, we don't want to say anything that could be detrimental to yourself or to the company. So don't say, oh, I'm a procrastinator, or oh, I'm so lazy. Think about things that could be a weakness in that workplace, but something that you're already starting to overcome. An example that I typically like to use is delegation. And so I have a type 1 personality, and I usually like to do things by myself to make sure that they're done right and appropriately. But delegation is something that's really important. And I don't think I could be a good leader or an effective coworker if I don't know how to delegate properly. So to do that, I will spend time finding out about the people on my team and their strengths and what they're good at. And so that way I can appropriately delegate out different tasks and duties to them. Now, that could be a pretty good way to answer a weakness question. So you're stating what your weakness is, but already how you know you would overcome that. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? You might get asked this question, or something about your goals. And so what you want to keep in mind is that you don't have to say, I still want to be in the same position, but you also don't want to say, oh, I want to be the boss of the company, or I want to be at another company by then. So be smart, incorporate that company and their values into your goals. And so that way they can kind of see where you would like to be headed and where you might be a good fit at in that company. What's your greatest accomplishment? So again, we want to keep this either based on academics or professional life, and think about something that could be different than what the person who interviews before or after you might say. So maybe don't say, well, graduating high school or graduating college. Those are huge accomplishments, but also something that likely the person interviewing after you would have done as well. So what's something different that shows a strength that you can bring to this new company or position? Why do you want this position? And this is a great time for you to pull in some of that research that you did before the interview to explain how you think that you would fit into the company, into their values, their culture, and what sort of strengths you can bring to that position. And then finally, why should we hire you? So again, this is your opportunity to set yourself up a little bit higher than the other people who are applying with you. So what are some personal qualifications that you have or things that you've done that make you different and stand out than the person interviewing against you? You'll see down here we have a link to a video. So on our website, we have a lot of good tips for interviewing. So make sure to check out those videos for additional tips and resources. A couple other questions that I'll pop up here that you may get, sometimes more ambiguous questions, such as, how do you want me to remember you? Or how are you different than any of the other applicants that we're interviewing? Sometimes you'll get asked a curveball question or a question that's out of the box. So it might be something like, what are you currently reading? Or if you were a tree, what kind would you be? Or what's the best restaurant in your hometown? Now, there's no right or wrong answer for these questions. Really, the interviewer is trying to see, can you think on your feet and give a creative answer? So you can't really practice for those, but just be aware that that may be something that you may encounter during the interview. Depending on what you're applying for, you might also get asked questions related to academics. So this could be, tell me about how you chose your current major, or have you ever changed your major and how did you handle that? How do you study or prepare for exams? Again, no right or wrong answer. They're just trying to learn a little bit more about you and see how you handle certain situations. A couple other questions related to your social skills or your interest. So they might ask you about a leadership role that you've had. So think back to any of those before the interview so that way you can answer a question about that. Maybe volunteer work, especially if this is listed on your resume, be able to give some good examples there. A lot of times they'll ask you some sort of question about how you handle stress because they want to know how you would work in their environment. And then obviously you'll get asked some situational questions or some questions based on your area or industry. So if you're going to be a teacher, you want to be prepared for classroom management questions. If you're going to the medical field, you want to be prepared for those. And then some up-to-date trends that are happening are always important to know as well. And then finally, some personality-oriented questions. So how would your friends describe you? What would a previous boss say about you? Or what do you do with your spare time? Again, no right or wrong answer to most of these questions. They just want to see your answer and how quickly can you think on your feet. So think a little bit beforehand about these and then know that you may get some curveball questions in the interview. So at the end of the interview, when it's coming to a close, typically the last thing they're going to say is, do you have any questions for me or for us? And the most important thing that you need to say is yes. My biggest pet peeve in an interview is when we've gone through the whole process and I ask if anybody has any questions and someone says, no, I don't think so. I think you've answered everything. That goes back to show me that you didn't do your research ahead of time. You didn't come in ready with questions and you may really not be that interested in the position. So a couple questions that you can think of to ask about anything in the job description that you want clarified. So maybe you had a question about what one of your duties would be or how that would look. Sometimes it's good to ask if there's a training period or some sort of mentorship program. So how would you get acclimated to the company? One of my favorite questions is, what do you think will be the biggest challenge of this position? One, so that way you'll be able to know what the answer is. And two, so you can kind of combat that and say, well, actually, I have experience doing XYZ, or I think I would be really great for that type of challenge. Again, you might want to know about the office environment, but make sure that you've done your research. And so if this is something that you could find out online, do not ask this question in an interview. Also, you want to avoid questions about salary and benefits, especially at the beginning of an interview and during the first interview, because these are some things that you may ask after you've been offered that position or when they bring you back in for a second interview. You never want it to seem that it's about the salary or what you're going to get out of the job or company. It's always about what you're bringing to them. So hold off on some of those questions until they've either offered you the position or you're back on site for a second interview. After the interview, again, you will give another firm handshake. Be sure to make eye contact and smile at everyone as you thank them very much for having you and for their time throughout the interview process. When you've left the interview, you might want to go back to your car and take out your portfolio and write down some of the good things that happened during the interview, and maybe some tricky questions or something that you want to follow up on, or a question that you think that you could have answered better in the future. This will help you practice for the next time you ever have an interview. A really important thing that I like to suggest is that after your interview, you send a thank you note. This is something that's really not commonly done anymore, and I really think it should be. Saying thank you is so important, and it really doesn't take that long. So whether you choose to send a handwritten thank you note or an email, it doesn't really matter. Just use your best judgment based on who you interviewed with and what you think they would prefer. This isn't your time to beg for the job. It's just simply to say, thank you for taking the time to meet with me. I enjoyed learning more about your company and the position. I still think I would be a great fit. Thank you for your time. And that's really going to go a long way throughout the interview process. One, it shows that you're grateful and that you know how to show gratitude. And another thing is it gets your name across that interview panel's desk one more time, which could be really important if there's a tight race between top two candidates. Other type of other type of interviews that you could have would be a video interview, maybe Skype or Zoom. And so we have other resources on this and also things on our website, but quickly what you want to think about is you should still dress up, right? Probably from head to toe. So don't just wear your pajama pants and a nice outfit. You never know if something would happen and you'd have to get up and then they would see that you were wearing your pajama pants. But make sure that you brush your hair, you look nice, prepare your surroundings. So what's behind you? Is it just a blank wall? Don't let them see that you're sitting in your bed, any of those kind of things. So prepare your surroundings. Remember to smile. Again, interviews are always awkward. And then an online interview can also be that as well. So just smile, try to stay engaged and stay present, and then be sure that you practice logging in beforehand. Make sure that you know that your video works, your microphone works, so that way there's no problems with technology during your interview. Another common type of interview would be a phone interview. And so again, we're still going to suggest that you dress up, look the part. You're going to feel a little more professional when you do that, and it will help you get in that mindset of having an interview. So smile, make sure that you're not chewing gum or eating a snack while you're on the phone for your interview. And again, this can be hard because you can't see the person, so try not to interrupt them. Let it be a back and forth conversation, and there may be more slight pauses on phone interviews than there would be in real life. So make sure that you're focusing, that you're listening, that you're really focusing on the question that they're asking, and that you're enunciating and speaking clearly so that way they can understand what you're saying. Again, try not to get too long-winded, provide short and detailed answers so that way you'll have a more beneficial conversation. So a couple of resources that we have to offer. Again, you can find these on our website. One is called Big Interview, and this is a great way to virtually practice your interviewing skills. So we have a whole nother video on that. Be sure to check that out. But basically, it's an online interviewing tool. So it's kind of, it'll record yourself answering questions, and you can send that to us or to your trusted faculty, family members, and friends for some tips on how to better improve your answers for an interview. We also have our job database system called Handshake. And so this is where you can search for jobs and internships to go ahead and start making some connections so that way you can land some interviews to put these tips and tricks to the test. So again, that is all. I hope that this will help you be better prepared for an interview and feel a little bit more confident going into that. If you are on the Troy campus, we can also conduct in-person mock interviews with you. But if you're not, or even if you are, make sure that you consider big interview as far as practicing. It's good to run through the questions a couple times to see how do you articulate those answers. Does it make sense, and is it something that's going to be professional and appropriate for that job interview. So if you have any questions, you can email us at troycareer@troy.edu. Make sure that you visit our website within my.troy.edu and follow us on social media at Troy U Career for important career tips and other events that we offer.